Many of us are taught that the first Thanksgiving on American soil occurred at Plymouth Rock in 1621 by the Puritans. This is not true. The American history books we studied as youth pretend that colonial American history is exclusively what happened in the 13 New England colonies. This ignores an enormous part of reality, our Catholic history. Little attention is paid to the epic northward advance by Spanish pioneers into the southern tier of states, reaching from Florida across Texas and New Mexico to California, today called the Spanish Borderlands. The first two Thanksgivings in the present-day United States were actually Catholic. The Pilgrims can only claim a third one, a correction I suggest should be made in school history books. The first Thanksgivings were celebrated by Spanish explorers, not pilgrims. It is Florida that today proudly claims the first Thanksgiving, with a feast and celebration between the Spanish and Timucuan Indians on September 8, 1565, 56 years before the Mayflower landed at Plymouth in 1621. Therefore, St. Augustine, and not Jamestown, is the first permanent European settlement and oldest city in North America, another correction for many history books. The landing of Captain General Pedro Menendez de Aviles and his fleet of soldiers and colonists, accompanied by priests, on the coast of South Florida on September 8, 1565, has all the qualification to count it as the first official Thanksgiving Day in our country. It was the first permanent European settlement in North America. There had been other attempts by the Spanish to establish colonies in Florida and Texas, but all were short-lived. In an official ceremony, Don Pedro Menendez came ashore amid the sounding of trumpets, artillery, salutes, and the firing of cannons to claim the land for King Philip II and Spain. One of the priests, Father Francisco Lopez de Mendoza Grajales, who had gone ashore the previous day, advanced to meet him, chanting the Te Deum Laudamus, and carrying a cross which Menendez and those with him reverently kissed. Then the 500 soldiers, 200 sailors, and 100 families and artisans, along with the Timucuan Indians from the nearby village of Seloy, gathered at a makeshift altar, and a mass in honor of the nativity of the Virgin Mary was said. The mass was followed by a feast shared by the Spanish and the Timucuan Indians. The Timucuans brought wild turkey, venison, oysters, and giant clams, as well as maize, beans, squash, nuts, and fruits. The Spaniards' contribution was cocido, a stew made with pork, garbanzo beans, and onions, along with biscuits, olive oil, and red wine. In his well-researched book on the state of Florida, titled Cross in the Sand, Dr. Michael Gannon duly affirmed that this mass and feast was the first community act of religion and thanksgiving in the first permanent European settlement in the land. Properly speaking, the history books should acknowledge this feast as the first Thanksgiving, but as the saying goes, the victors write the history, so for many years the textbooks only placed emphasis on the English settlement in Plymouth, ignoring the fact that the Spanish were here long before them. The second Thanksgiving was in Texas. On January 26, 1598, a Spanish expedition set out from Mexico with the aim of founding a new kingdom. 3 months later, after a long, dangerous trek forging a new trail northward, the now famous El Camino Real, it crossed the Rio Grande and set up camp south of present-day El Paso, Texas. On April 30th, a mass of thanksgiving was said, and the valiant leader of the expedition, Don Juan de Oñate, took formal possession of the new land, called New Mexico, in the name of the heavenly Lord God Almighty and the earthly Lord King Philip II. Then, after the Mass, the Franciscan priests blessed the food on tables abundant with fish, ducks, and geese, and the 600-strong expedition of soldiers and colonists feasted. The celebration ended with a play enacting scenes of the native Indians hearing the first words of the Catholic faith and receiving the sacrament of baptism. If the New Spain colonies had not set aside their Catholic heritage, perhaps today Florida would be celebrating its Thanksgiving Day on September 8th, while Texas would have its own special feast on April 30th. This would be more in keeping with the healthy spirit of regionalism, which characterizes organic society. Still, we can commemorate it on the fourth Thursday of November or any other day, joining together with family and friends to thank God for our Catholic past and ask Him to take up again the original plan for our nation, that it may rightly celebrate the reign of Christ and Our Lady in all its festivals and actions.